Our first guest is the first voice I hear when I wake up that isn't screaming, "Daddy, make me pancakes." You can hear him every morning like I do on Sirius XM and read his innermost thoughts. In this book, Howard Stern comes again. Please welcome the pride of Long Island, Howard Stern. Have you felt the enthusiasm in this city?
You know what? This, as you said, L.A. is all a buzz. It's great. I live in New York. I'm a hermit, as you know. And when I come out here, like every 15, 20 years, the first they think there's a giant praying mantis in town. But then there I am, and people get excited when I'm here. As you are excited.
I am excited.
I'm very excited. For those of you who don't know, Jimmy is my dear friend. We even go on vacation occasionally together.
Yes,
we have a very close relationship. I'm almost family.
Yes.
I'm not quite family because if you're family, then you get a job here.
We'd be happy to take you on.
I'm backstage and I'm walking around the halls and you run into Cousin Bertha, and Uncle Cleto, Aunt Flippy. And, you see these people, and these people, I guess, are entitled to jobs. It's a wedding song. Why do birds suddenly appear every time Jimmy's near? Just like me, they long to be close to you.
Oh, thank you.
On the day that you were born, the angels sent the banner and decided to create a dream come true. So they sprinkled fairy dust among your little head and took his holy too. Look how uncomfortable you are.
I know, yeah, I'm very uncomfortable, yeah.
Like you didn't even move. We are.
So going back to my theory that, you've become, an acceptable guy in terms of the in crowd. What was it? You would tell me about Bill Gates, and then you said to me,
oh, yeah, right.
What was that all about?
Well, on Bill Gates' last day of work.
Bill Gates, the guy who invented basically, he started Microsoft. Yeah.
At Microsoft, his last day, I roasted him.
Oh, his last day at Microsoft, they say to you, would you come and roast him?
Yeah, and I said, "Is this you want a real roast, or this
or a light roast,
a toast?"
Right?
No, a roast. Even the invitation said roast,
and it's just you roasting him.
It was me and a lot of famous people roasting him, but mostly people from Microsoft. But it was Warren Buffett.
Oh wow!
Who else? Steve Ballmer was there. It was a.
I know who Steve Ballmer is, but of course, explain to everyone.
He owns the Clippers. He was one of
okay.
the big guys.
Steve Ballmer owns the Clippers? Yeah.
The L.A. Clippers. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, it was a disaster. It was an absolute. I mean, he did not. First of all, I insisted that he be on stage with me if I was going to do this because the key to a roast is that the people in the audience see
that he's a good sport.
Laughing.
Yes.
Well. Unfortunately, the roasty was not laughing.
Oh my God! So who misled you?
Not even a little bit.
Who did you say to? Who said to you that he wants to be roasted? Were you having a direct conversation with him?
Well, he did. I mean, no, it wasn't a direct conversation. I mean, he agreed. He knew it wasn't a surprise.
Right.
Maybe he didn't know what exactly a roast was.
Oh my God! Because listen, you got to know yourself. When it's a roast, they say horrible things about you.
Right.
And they're all basically true.
Right.
So you gotta just fucking take it. But I don't get roasted because I can't take it. I have a thin skin.
Well, neither could Bill Gates.
Wow.
And at the end of it, he said, "I want to thank the comedian."
The comedian.
The comedian.
Oh my
He's like,
God.
we couldn't get Jay Leno for this.
Did you go over to him and say, "Listen"?
No, I was furious at the end of the night.
You were?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because because he wasn't laughing, did you bomb?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
The only person laughing was Steve Ballmer, and he was laughing like a maniac.
Did anyone tape this?
In a way made it worse.
Did anyone tape it?
They had like 5 cameras shooting this thing.
Oh my
God.
God.
I think the tapes have been destroyed.
If Microsoft wants to go into the streaming business, all they have to do is release that. Oh, my God. You must have been flipping out.
One of my jokes was...
what did you say about
Bill Gates got a 1580 on the SAT. The only reason he didn't get a perfect score is because one of the questions was, what does a vagina look like?
That's funny. That's funny. And he's not laughing at that?
Oh, no.
You were talking about the business of the Beatles, and this to me is fascinating. When they break up, all right, and who knows who broke? Everyone has a theory.
I know.
Who broke it up?
John.
John did.
Yeah.
And he tried to pin it all on you.
No, I don't think anyone tried to pin it on you. It just came out that way. That's a long story. But there was a meeting where John came in and said, hey, guys, I'm leaving the group.
Right. He was with Yoko.
He'd found Yoko. And John loved strong women.
Yes.
His mother had been a strong woman. His auntie who brought him up had been a strong woman. And bless her, but his first wife wasn't. She'd once said to me, all I want is a sort of a guy who wants a pipe and slippers.
Right.
Come
Stay
home and do that. And I thought, whoa, that's not John.
You got the wrong guy.
And so John had met up with Yoko, and even though we thought, oh, God, a bit intrusive, she used to sit in on the recording sessions, and we'd never had anything like that.
Yeah.
But looking back on it, you think the guy was totally in love with her.
Yeah.
And, you've just got to respect that. So we did, and I do.
But this song fascinates me. And I thought it was kind of an attack. Not I kind of thought this, I know it. And it's my favorite song you ever wrote. That was your first mistake. You took your lucky break and broke it in two. That was directed at John.
We were writing songs at each other.
Yes.
It's like weaponizing songs.
Because to me, you had the experience that I wanted in a president. And when you were Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger said, you were like an incredible secretary. And he is the gold standard. The guy's a brilliant guy.
Right.
I mean, all of the work you've done and all of the public service, that's what I want in a president. I need somebody proven.
Well, we do need that, don't we?
We do need it. We really do need it.
I know.
Well, first of all, let's get this out of the way. You've written this book with your daughter.
Right.
The Book of Gutsy Women.
Right.
And I was shocked. No Oprah.
We left out some of the best-known people like Oprah or Michelle Obama, for example, or Angela Merkel.
Good. They get enough.
Well, we thought that, first of all, they do a great job speaking for themselves, and everybody knows they're gutsy.
Right. What does gutsy mean, to be a gutsy woman?
It means having that determination, that persistence to not only achieve something for yourself, but also to make a positive difference for others. I'm interested in people who are successful, and there are many of them, obviously men and women. But I'm especially interested in people who overcome unbelievable obstacles because they believe in something bigger than themselves.
I was thinking this book is like an award show. Like
it is
Hillary
kind of.
By the way,
an article did come out saying that Gilbert was banned from the show, and then Gilbert had every right to call up Gary and ask about it, and Gary told Gilbert that they don't have comedians on anymore.
Oh, yeah.
And then Gilbert listened the next day, and they had 4 comedians on.
Yeah.
He'd prefer Chelsea Handler's brand of humor. So are you upset, Gilbert, that even though she is one of, our generation's greatest comics, that he'd prefer to have Chelsea?
I wouldn't be surprised if him having her on was just a fuck you to me. Yeah.
It has to be really, really funny as you get older. Is that true?
yes.
It has to be really, really funny.
Dude.
I mean, your tastes change, and you've done so much comedy, and
you've heard so much. Yeah.
Yeah, you can burn out.
You do the show,
and then I do the show I want to do. I had a laugh. The new thing from the people who now hate me is, Howard changed because Marcy Turk, who is the woman who runs my company, he got this woman in there, and she calls the shots on the show, and she won't let him do this and that.
Whoa. Stop the clock.
I don't not like Howard. There's a broad he hired named Marcy Turk. That's what I was doing, the goof.
Marcy Turk, yes, very funny, yes.
She brainwashed. Howard had the most impressive brain I've ever seen in my life. This was a thinker, and a brilliant mind. Someone actually brainwashed him. This woman came in, Gary, blah, blah, blah. He had an office, right? He wanted 5 more feet in the office the entire time I was there. She gets hired, gets his office, and they make it bigger.
Oh, my God, really?
I mean,
And by the way, I got a retraction. I found out that she did not take Gary's office. She took Tracy's office, the douche.
Yeah.
And because of that, Gary has to share an office with an intern. It's even worse.
She's involved with this book called Getting Things Done, which has been said on the internet. It's like a cult. And she came in and just made everything politically correct. Gary the retard became Gary the conqueror. There's no more gay jokes. You can't, with gay people, if you want to be equal, you're going to get goofed on like everybody else. That's the. I don't have anything against anyone, and that's what the Stern Show was about. That's all gone.
I've been doing this my whole life, radio. I do what I feel like doing. Marcy, you think of Marcy as the general manager here. She's a general manager. She sits there and does a lot of different things and helps run the organization, all that. But when it comes to the content of the show, I don't sit and meet with her about the content of the show.
Whoa. Stop the clock.
Marcy Turk, you are an inspiration to me every single day. You changed my life. Thank you. The fans don't know you, but I'll tell you this, fan. If you love the Howard Stern Show, you love this woman, Marcy Turk.
I just didn't want him to feel like he would upset me.
You are an inspiration to me every single day. You changed my life. Thank you. The fans don't know you, but I'll tell you this, fans. If you love the Howard Stern Show, you love this woman, Marcy Turk. You are an inspiration to me every single day. You changed my life. Thank you. The fans don't know you.
People want controversy. They want to hear that something weird is going on.
You've been taken over.
I've been taken over by pod people or something.
Are we going to have to... whatever happened to Howard Stern podcast?
Yeah, if you like this show, it's because, let's face it, it's my vision. That's it.
Hello, this is George Takei again, and you're listening to Nothing Worthwhile with Moody and Gru, the Howard Stern Sirius Years, Part 2. And this is the episode where we actually bid adieu to familiar Stern guests such as Richard Belzer, Gilbert Gottfried, Artie Lang, Richard Simmons, and Crackhead Bob. Oh, wait. Bob is actually dead, just like I am actually gay. And if you don't like that, you can suck it. Please?
Thank you, Mr. George Takei, America's #1 bi-coastal podcast with
You're
great count on
very welcome.
That's 400, over 400 downloads featuring 2 annoying Jews. It is Nothing Worthwhile. Representing the West Coast in the great city of Phoenix, Arizona, it is me, Evan Moody, and on the East Coast, representing the great city of Coral Springs, Andrew Gruthius. Gru, how the hell are you, my friend?
Wait a minute. There are Jews here? I'm doing fine, man.
In Coral Springs?
In Coral Springs, yeah.
Well, let me say this, as my dad would say, does a bear shit in the woods?
I'm doing fine. Just, this is a rare middle of the work week podcast we're doing.
Well, I can see the wrinkles under your eyes. I'm sure I'm looking exhausted, but you know what? We know what's important.
Let me tell you something. That luxurious head of hair of yours is just so beautiful. The sheen, the shine.
Do you remember what I used to have up here?
I do.
Yeah.
And I say to you, Gru, it's sad. It's sad, Gru. I'm about to turn 50, and I'm a broken shell of my former self.
Well, that's sad for you because I'm doing fine because I was never anything before. So, not much has changed.
Yeah, I mean, this podcast celebrates low expectations.
That's right. Actually, that if we ever come up with a second podcast, Low Expectations with Moody and Gru, I think that's a great title right there.
Gru, before we get to the topic at hand, let's scale back to our last discussion. It was the king of all media, Howard Stern. The Sirius Years Part 1. We talked about and we took a look at Howard's last years on terrestrial radio, the factors that may have led Howard's jump to Sirius satellite radio on 1906. Those early years with Sirius, David Lee Roth being tapped to replace Howard on terrestrial radio and his ultimate failure doing so, and Stern sidekick Artie Lang's suicide attempt and removal from the Stern Show. I enjoyed this podcast, one of our better ones. Thoughts as we look back to Howard the Sirius Years Part 1.
I thought it was great. I listened to it. I played it back in the car. It was good. I mean, there was we covered a lot of ground, a lot of time, and we left no stone unturned. I was looking for things that we might have forgotten, and we got it all. We really did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a paralegal. I don't know if my research is completely.
It's not even that. It's even stuff that came into our minds as we were remembering things. We covered a lot of ground, and I'm not one to pat ourselves on the back. I mean, I physically can't. So but I'm very pleased with last week's show, and it really only got me more excited to talk about this week's. What's to come.
Ironically enough, we talked a little bit during the week and texted. Howard and the team took yet again another unannounced vacation for the past 2 weeks as we move into Howard Stern, the Sirius Years Part 2. We did talk about Artie Lang's drug and alcohol addiction, and it got so bad on December 9th, 2009, Sirius management told Artie to go home. He was granted some time off the show. He went to rehab, hated everything about it, left 8 days later, January 2nd, 2010, sadly. Lang attempted suicide. We talked about it, stabbing himself 9 times in the abdomen with a 13-inch kitchen knife. Executives for SiriusXM stated that Artie would be welcome back onto the Stern Show, but Howard later decided against it, thinking it would not aid in his recovery. Gru, Artie's had a variety of projects in both television, radio, and podcasts since his departure from the Stern Show. He's had a roller coaster ride with addiction. He's been arrested, hospitalized, been put in jail several times. This last bout seems to have worked as he's been clean for the better part of a year and has begun his own podcast, Artie Lang's Halfway House. Gru, thoughts on Artie Lang post Howard Stern?
To tell you the truth, I haven't really listened to much because, Artie was or is someone who really came to shine with Howard, and the few things I've heard him do otherwise, like when he was with Nick DiPaolo, as we talked about last week, and the stuff that he does right now, it's just not, that edge is not there. That doesn't mean he's not, he's definitely got talent, and I love the fact that he's getting healthy and that he's sober. But his brand of commentary without Howard just doesn't quite appeal to me, if I'm being honest. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, that seems to be a running theme with a lot of the ex-Stern Show guys. I think Artie, I've listened to the podcast, I've listened to the Halfway House. I enjoy it, but clearly I think a lot of the feedback from at least Stern fans is he's a much better sidekick than maybe a lead guy.
Yes,
and he
I think that's the thing.
Needs somebody strong to kind of rein him in, maybe?
Yeah. He's not a host. He never was. He was. Hey, before he was Howard Stern's sidekick, he was basically Norm Macdonald's sidekick in a lot of ways, right? Kind of.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so I mean, he plays that role beautifully, and like I saw him stand up a couple times, and good.
He's good. He's good.
He's good. But it makes me miss him on the Stern Show because the Stern Show misses him, in my opinion.
Well, we'll get to that. I think Artie's also struggled in this new sort of PC generation as well. He's a guy that likes to push the edges, and I think a guy like him has found it tough to sort of fit in with that brand of comedy.
Yeah, without a doubt. Guys like him and even Dice Clay or people like that, they're not going to find mainstream success in today's. I don't know what's that guy's name? I can't even name like the popular comedians of today. Aziz Ansari, is that his name?
Oh, yeah.
Like we can't all be Amy Schumer. Like
don't want to be. Grew after years of acrimonious comments on Artie's part. We wrapped it up that Artie and Howard have sort of softened their stances publicly over the last year or so. Will we ever see Artie on the Stern Show again? Grew said yes. Moody, myself, not so sure. One thing for sure, it's almost been a decade since Artie Lang last appeared on the Howard Stern Show. So what has happened to the Stern Show since 2010? In December 2010, Stern renewed his contract with Sirius XM to continue his radio show for another 5 years. His new deal allowed him to work a reduced schedule from 4 to 3 live radio shows each year. March 22nd, though, already troubles brewing. Stern and super agent Don Buchwald filed a lawsuit against Sirius XM for $300 million, claiming annual bonuses were not paid despite Stern meeting subscriber growth targets. April 17, 2012, Judge Barbara Kapnick disagreed with their suit and dismissed it with prejudice, thus preventing Howard from filing another suit over similar allegations. The pair filed an appeal, but it was rejected by an appeal court. So I think basically Howard's argument was when Sirius XM had the merger and they blended the two listening groups, they hit the subscriber number. Sirius XM, I think kind of said, well, one is one and one is the other. Could make a case for both. But what I wanted to ask you is a very strange situation with Howard suing his employer while being employed, kind of awkward, suing your boss while working for the company. Howard versus Sirius XM in court. Grew, any thoughts?
One billionaire versus another, so not something that I really followed because they weren't, at the time, they weren't talking about it, or they weren't really...
Howard did talk about it.
He did, but did it get into major detail? I remember the thing about how Sirius XM's loophole was that his deal was with Sirius.
Yes, well,
I remember that, and
they tried to say that the merger, and see, I was thinking about this. You can make a case for both because I believe Howard's presence did, in essence, force the hand for the merger. Because I think XM knew the writing was on the wall. I mean, possibly. I don't know their books or whatnot. Mm-hmm. But I can see Sirius XM saying, well, XM's people were XM subscribers, and why should Howard Stern get credit for them? But I agree with you, a fantastic amount of money at stake. But Howard was pretty brutal for a while.
Yeah.
His thoughts with Sirius XM.
I remember he was crapping on a lot of the stuff that they did. He was crapping on our boy Bruce, too. Like because E Street Radio was up and was a big deal back then, it still is. But I remember him just basically doing his show and not promoting Sirius the way he used to, and you could tell. And actually, it was entertaining radio, if I must say. It was entertaining to hear him angry. Like
yep.
I hate to get off on other people's pain, but Howard angry is always entertaining radio.
Howard shit on E Street Radio?
Well, I remember him saying, he's like, and I don't want to go. I don't want you giving me any Bruce Springsteen tickets to try to butter me up. All right, I don't need to see Springsteen to know that you're screwing me in the ass. Like he would say like that. Like I'd be like, why do you got to bring Bruce into it, Howard? But that was his attitude.
I remember him getting very upset because there was some kind of boy band, and Fred Norris tried to bring his daughter, and he wasn't on the ticket list, and Howard went nuts on Sirius XM.
I remember that too.
Really went crazy on them. And actually, I say good for Howard for I don't want to say defending Fred, but trying to get his guy some tickets so he could show off to his kid.
Yeah, and I'll say this: while the lawsuit was come on, in my mind, at the same time, anything that brings out the truth in Howard, that kind of hardcore truth, I liked the radio at the time. It was good radio. I can't deny that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it was awkward. I remember listening to it, and it was awkward.
That's what was fun about it to me.
He was, such a huge fan, but for a while, he really let loose, and then after the decision, he bitched about it for a couple of weeks, and then it was dropped, and he seemed to be back on board, hand in hand with Sirius XM.
Yeah, but
because they've really given him pretty much everything in the world. I mean that an entertainment platform could give a performer.
Yeah, I mean. They built their entire business model was built sort of around him. He's the only one who's got 2 channels. That's a start. Yeah. And they gave it, and before he signed, they gave him what he wanted. He wanted 2 channels. They gave him 2 channels. I mean, it must be great. Well, it must be great to be rich and miserable.
Well, let me ask you this, because. I did speak about it, but as a fan, he signs, he goes to 4 days a week, and then on the next contract, he goes 3 days a week. And we'll talk about some of the other things that he does, but let's focus in on, did you feel a little gypped as a fan? He's going to just give us basically 3 days a week shows?
I never felt gypped because I just don't look at it that way. I don't, I see some of the fans, how they're saying, what am I paying for? Howard's only one of several channels that I listen to. So I didn't feel gypped, but I did feel give us more. Not because you owe it to us. I just want, I want more. I don't want, I don't want just 3 shows a week, and God forbid, this week, Monday, yesterday was a holiday, so he wasn't on. So now this week we'll get 2 shows a week.
Yeah.
2 shows this week. There's so much, and especially I used to listen. Howard was my news outlet, and I'm sure he was for you. Now I'm watching CNN. Okay, when I used to get and Fox News. I enjoy going back and forth, but the point is, I used to want the number one person whose take I wanted on all this shit was Howard Stern. And now it's if something happens Wednesday afternoon, we're going to have to wait till Monday to hear Howard talk about it. And by then it'll be old news, Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's whenever he goes on vacation is what he calls it. I call it semi-retirement. But when he goes on vacation, it always seems that somebody dies, an athlete or an entertainer or somebody in music, and then you're waiting to hear what Howard has to say. 6 Mondays from now to hear his thoughts. And I guess you're gonna really love this, Screw, because later in 2011, Howard announces his return to network television. He's replacing Piers Morgan as a judge on America's Got Talent. AGT is in its 7th season. Howard shows his clout as the show relocates to New York City, specifically Radio City Music Hall, to cater to his radio show schedule. Howard was a judge on the show for their 8th, 9th, and 10th seasons. Howard left after the end of their 10th season. Howard was known kind of as the a little bit as the cranky judge on AGT. He was known for judging the acts based on whether he thinks that an act is potentially a Vegas act, which could sound like a good strategy.
Mm-hmm.
He would buzz kind of quick, any mistakes if the act seemed boring, or if it took the act too long to sort of get into gear. And Howard Stern, now he's a mainstream act on national television, network TV. Gru, your thoughts when you heard the announcement? Howard's going to AGT.
I was excited about it because I was interested to see how that would go. I had never watched AGT before, and after 2 episodes, I never watched it again. Only because, but I can tell you why. Because immediately, and you'll hate me for this, among other things, but I felt he went to the wrong show. I felt he was a much better fit for American Idol.
Oh, Lord.
I don't
hate you for that. It's funny, if I could just butt in real quick.
Yeah, go.
It's funny because I wrote in my notes, for me, there seemed to be initial tremendous enthusiasm for the first season. I couldn't wait for AGT. Then it waned. I just like you, I don't know if I lasted. I know I lasted more than 2 episodes, but by the end of the first season, I didn't care. I was out. And,
I didn't like the acts. That was the thing. I didn't. To me, it wasn't. There wasn't enough comedy from Howard when he's like judging a magician or stuff like that. I thought when I saw that, I was like, I would love to hear him tell aspiring musicians the truth, because that's the only time American Idol was great was when that even though I know he hates Simon Cowell, but when Simon Cowell was on American Idol and he would be the voice of reason, and that's what I was hoping from Howard Stern with these judge type shows, and it missed the mark. AGT missed the mark for me.
Yeah,
he was too nice. He was too nice.
I was just going to say, what you were hoping for this rebellious guy to sort of bring an edge.
Yeah, why else would we want him on there?
All right, can I finish my thought? Yeah. But it was too sanitized. The little rebellious moments that Howard tried to put forth were either edited out or, and so what I wanted to ask you is, and we'll talk about where the show is going, but was this part of some kind of bigger master plan on how Howard was to be presented sort of nationally?
It's a great question. I never really thought of that. I don't know. I don't think so. I think they just came to him. Maybe he was looking to spice things up in his own life, do something different, something completely out of left field that he felt comfortable doing. We know he was a fan of those type of shows.
Yes,
he talked to them. So I don't think it was any part of like big long range plan. I think it was just something he thought he might enjoy, or at least enjoy bitching about, which he did, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed him bitching about the different things about what he had to do on his own show. So that part I did enjoy. So but the answer to your question is no. I don't think it was like part of a long-term strategy.
Yeah, I think they were angling to present a softer side of Howard, a slight change, but a change nonetheless. And it was something not pleasing about seeing Howard on network TV, the king of all media, this raucous guy. I think even when he announced it on the air with Don Buchwald, and Don Buchwald called in, I think they talked about, their next move being Howard on family television, which is what AGT was. And just like you said, I was so excited. I was at the TV for the first episode and the second and then the fourth, if not so much, and I was out by the end of the season.
Yeah,
not interested.
Would you say that was Howard's first real foray into this new Hollywood Howard type person that he's sort of become?
He's not sort of. And so this part's going to be hard for me because here's the crux of the debate. But as I say on my notes, I call it a slight change, but it's all about to change for many of the Stern long-time hardcore fans, and most of them are not too happy about it. Because I got 2 words for you, Gru. Marcy
Turk.
Who is this Marcy Turk, and what magical hold does she seem to have in the Stern organization? So I credit that 401ksite.com. Don't blame Marcy Turk. Blame Howard Stern. And the author goes on to compare Marcy Turk to such jump the shark type characters as Cousin Oliver and the Brady Bunch.
Is she the Ted McGinley of?
Well, I was going to say Ted McGinley when he joined Married with Children,
and The Love Boat, and every show he's ever done.
And the writer is saying that the Stern Show is not dead by any stretch, but the addition of Turk means it's close. And it talks about over the years, Howard Stern Show has changed from a rebellious, raucous show to a more politically correct A-list guest chat-a-thon. But why? And of course, many of the hardcore Stern fans blame one lady, Marcy Turk. And who is Marcy Turk? She is now the chief operating officer of the Howard Stern channels on Sirius. Prior to her stint with Sirius, listen to this, Gru, she has had absolutely no radio experience, 0. She worked as a consultant for the David Allen Company, that same self-help guru who Howard is a fan of. David Allen touts organizational strategies that help you unclutter your life, and Howard has definitely referenced David Allen on the radio. Matter of fact, I'm gonna recommend David Allen to you, Gru, to unclutter that apartment of yours.
Didn't she also spend some time working at the Roosevelt Field Flea Market selling shampoos and deodorants?
What was that silver fox I sold to all the old ladies? She was, prior to this, she was a financial advisor for 4 years. And so forgetting about her influence over Howard, I just find it amazing that the chief operating officer for the greatest radio show in the world has absolutely zero
radio
experience. What do you think about that?
It boggles the mind. It's like, where did she come from? Or like, well, we know where she came from, but how did she end up there? Was she looking for the gig? Did somebody go after her? I don't know. Do you know? Because it still boggles my mind that Howard would give up so much control over his show to anybody.
But wasn't he a guy that always said, "I'm a clock in, I'm a worker. I don't." If you listen to the old clips, he didn't want to be. He never fired anybody. That was left to Baba Booey. He certainly never fired Baba Booey when he got into those massive fights on the air. He didn't like confrontation. He would only confront on the radio because he had sort of that protection of being on the air. And if we've even had clips. I know Artie's even referenced early on those angry clips about in Stuttering John about a cult. So I don't know, but I imagine Howard may have found her through these David Allen sort of channels, because I know Howard was a big fan about organization. He would talk about he wouldn't talk about it too much, but he's talked about reading the books. He's even talked to Robin. She's always losing her phone and her office is cluttered, and Howard would always talk about uncluttering her life and her inbox and things of that nature. So I have a feeling, although I have no research, that Howard probably found her through some of these this organization, so to speak.
Well, maybe. Do you think that there was any of Beth's influence on this? For those not in the know, Beth is Howard's second wife.
Yeah, I don't know about this, but I definitely feel she has softened him publicly, and I have no proof, but you've seen it a million times in show business, or you've seen it in life. The wife or the new wife. I think she's definitely centered him a little bit, and made him
actually, and
a little more mainstream.
and I just realized it all kind of adds up because at the time, it seems like he was basically looking for a whole lot of responsibility lifted from his shoulders. And around the same time, his work schedule lessened. He started doing what he had never really done before, going out a lot. You see him at every Knicks game now. He's like the Jack Nicholson of New York. He's always doing these, going out with Beth and on the town. So it's like now he has more time. He doesn't have to get up at 4 a.m. 5 days a week anymore. So maybe Marcy Turk was kind of brought in to lessen his burden.
Do you ever hear the rant he goes on in 2015 when he's at the Knick game and he leaves early and Jeff Van Gundy calls him out on the broadcast?
Yes.
Howard just goes nuts on Jeff Van Gundy.
Oh, we got to find that for our next Howard Stern.
So the article does go on to say that Howard felt, or at least intimates that Howard felt he needed organizational help. Tim Sabian, who was running the Howard channels, was perceived to have little organizational control, including his bowels, a.k.a. Shitgate, if you do remember.
See, we're laughing about it now, and I miss it.
Benji was notorious for coming in late. Ronnie the limo driver was doing the block party. And the wrap-up show was all of Howard's side players vying for airtime while the main show may have suffered. Any truth to that?
Yes, a lot, complete truth to that, I think. Don't you remember how Howard every now and then would call in or even stop by the wrap-up show? Well, he was still involved in
here. So here's the interesting part: Marcy Turk, Marcy Turk enters, and voila,
good vibration. Everybody dance now.
The block party gone. The wrap-up show becomes a decided two-man affair. Gary Delabate, John Hine, with an occasional guest who does not get booked on the Stern Show. No more Benji. No more Sal. No more Richard. No more Ralph. And now the wrap-up show is now on Howard 101. Mm-hmm. All of the original content on Howard 101, all of the other Stern Universe shows are slowly removed, most likely in a cost-cutting move. Bubba the Love Sponge, gone. Scotty Farrell, gone. Jay Thomas passes away. Riley Martin passes away.
But Jay Thomas, wait, was Jay Thomas? No, I'm asking you. Was
Can
Jay
you
Thomas?
Wait till I finish my.
Okay.
Well,
no.
let me hear.
I feel like, if memory serves, it feels like Jay Thomas was the last one standing until he passed away, which was kind of sudden.
I think it was Greg Fitzsimmons. Chuck Zito is gone. Greg Fitzsimmons show is gone. Stern Fan Roundtable gone. Howard 100 news updates all gone.
Was this around the same time? Did all these things disappear around the same time?
I said that no, but they slowly phase out these additional pieces.
Okay.
And most of it was based around Howard 101. So let me give you my thoughts. I can't say I was a consistent listener to Howard 101. I did enjoy, I enjoyed the occasional listen to many of the shows. I enjoyed probably the most the Scotty Farrell show because I'm a sports guy, so I did listen to his show sometimes at nights. I actually got called in live to the Farrell show. You'll like this one when Rob Van Dam and Sabu were caught with all that marijuana. And remember, RVD had just beaten Cena in the one-night stand for the title.
I remember that.
And they were going to give him a big push. He got arrested for marijuana. Then the next night he lost to Big Show, the belt, and his push was gone.
Yeah, I remember that.
Farrell was saying, well, of course these guys smoke weed. They put their bodies through tables, chairs. And I was like, yeah. So, I mean, I guess it was like a security blanket. I loved I liked the option of being able to listen to all these additional Stern Universe-related content and shows. Gru, did you listen to the original content on 101? And do you miss any of it now that it's gone?
I listened to. I really enjoyed Jay Thomas's show.
Yeah,
but that's because Jay Thomas to me his biggest days were way before Howard Stern. So I knew of him for a long time. So I really enjoyed his show and the dynamic he had.
Wasn't
ahead.
he the morning guy at K-Rock before Howard?
Yes,
and Howard replaced him.
Yes, but he'd also had a lot of other radio jobs. But he was also an actor. He was in Cheers.
Yes.
He was in. He had a great performance in a movie called Mr. Holland's Opus, which was very memorable. So he was a star, not an A-list star, but a star nonetheless. But
would you say he had a run of being a pretty solid character actor for a while?
Yes, very much. And
thank you, Mr. Hollywood.
Well, I am Joe Hollywood.
That's right.
I used to listen to when I would catch. I would never listen to Riley Martin. The guy just drew like fingernails on a blackboard. But Pharrell sometimes he was enjoyable. I liked his show.
Wait, you didn't listen to Riley when they had the caller shout outs like you, Jassol?
No, I would listen to the clips that they would play on Stern.
That's a joke. Okay,
I know.
Yes, okay.
But I was familiar enough with Riley Martin that the clips that they would play on Howard's show was more than enough. But I did like Pharrell. Never liked Bubba the Love Sponge. Never really listened to that.
Would you say, though, I'm sorry to interrupt, I want to get your feedback. Bubba was, for a while, pretty tied into the Stern Show. I mean, he visited a couple of times, and they had some interplay between the two shows.
Yes, but I never liked him. I thought he reminded me of a Rush Limbaugh for some reason. Just like a pompous, like really pompous, and it just drove me. It rubbed me the wrong way.
Okay, fair enough.
Just never a big fan of his.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but the other, but then they would have Master Tape Theater, which I liked.
Great.
Loved hearing the old, especially when they got access to the old stuff, the tapes. And yeah, that content was like a grab bag, and then like the history of Howard Stern stuff. I talked about it last time. There was one of my favorite things. I don't know if it was a 101 thing or it was like a 100 thing, but that sitcom, that radio sitcom that Sam Simon wrote, that was terrific also. Stuff like that. And that's another thing that's missing, like more than just the show. And, you bringing up all the people who the Marcy Turk years have kind of exercised from the show. I'm surprised like people like Richard and Sal are still there because they push the envelope. Don't they, with their phone calls and their sexual stuff?
Yeah, I feel like their calls have even been toned down a little bit. They don't play some of those real early rude ones. Some of that Jack and Rod stuff was pretty brilliant early on. Was really good. I mean, I miss some of the 101 stuff for sure.
Is Marcy Turk responsible for like Scott the Engineer leaving or like characters like that?
That I don't know, but let's go. Well, let me get to some other stuff.
Okay, go ahead.
We'll bring it up. Then we talk. So we talk about 101. The other big change is the focus of the actual Stern show. The raucous shock jock take all prisoners show has now become a lot more tamer, more politically correct, no more slurs, no more Gary the retard. He's now Gary the conqueror. No more Wendy the retard. She is now Wendy the slow adult. The show has slowly morphed into a more mainstream A-list celebrity gab fest, similar to Ellen DeGeneres or any other generic sort of talk show.
Yes, I will still hand it to Howard. He does the best interview that there is. I mean, sometimes, yes, he will soft soak some people, but he will still go after truths that we won't hear on a Jimmy Fallon or even an Oprah. I think you don't agree?
Yeah, it's just the bar is so low.
Depends who it is, I guess. But.
I mean, those early interviews that when he started getting A-list. Remember, he's had A-list guests on the show way back in the early '90s. Alec Baldwin, Arnold. I would say his interviews.
Donald Trump.
his interview style has definitely evolved. But back in the day, he was pretty fearless. He'd go after, and if you had some kind of sort of something lurking in your closet, he'd go after it. And
yes.
I guess I hear more and more bailouts. Even today with David Spade, he wanted Spade to admit something, and Spade wouldn't. And Howard kind of left him off the hook. I'm not saying the old Howard would have, but the old Howard might have dug in a little bit deeper. It's just. But you have to remember the guy's well over 60 years old now, and so people do evolve.
They do.
So the article goes on to say, do we hate Marcy Turk? The writer says Howard Stern has been evolving for years, a long time before Marcy Turk ever came on board. The writer references Howard's divorce, his marriage to his second wife, Beth, Jackie the Joke Man leaving the show, Artie Lang leaving the show, and Howard going on AGT, America's Got Talent. The writer's premise is that it's Howard that wanted this change. He was a rebel and outsider for all these years, but yearned to become part of this exclusive group. He used to make fun of Jennifer Aniston. Now he vacations with her in Mexico. Gru, it's a lot to digest. It's the essential piece of the podcast, this debate. The current state of Howard Stern, changes in all. Marcy Turk, let me hear your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts are not that deep on this one because in hearing the way you described it, it sucks for us, but he has every right to evolve the way he has. He has every right. He's done more than his share of entertaining for 40 years, and he has the right to live his life the way he'd like to live it. And if that means less responsibility at work, power to him. It's our loss, but I'm just curious where the thoughts came from. Maybe it was from therapy, because he talks at length about that.
He talks about it ad nauseum sometimes. Right? He gets me. Listen, I'm all for it, but he pushes a lot of that agenda on his guests too. He always references
and meditation,
therapy. Well, he's always been that. That's one thing.
That's true. But anytime I would hear that, like when I used to listen to the show, I used to picture him like if he had like a porn star on or like a hot guest. Like I used to picture him like after the show, like going into the bathroom and just being with himself for a little while. But now it's like meditation.
But what he would
did I just say? Did I just say I would picture Howard? I didn't say that. That never.
Do you want to edit? Do you want to edit that out?
I figured that's what he was doing. Let's put it that way.
You mentioned porn stars, and Howard was known earlier in his career, and even up to the early 2000s. He'd even have long-form interviews with porn stars. And what I loved about Howard's interviews was it felt like he had the same approach if it was a porn star or a politician. And that's what actually I loved about his interview style. He wanted to know how this damaged girl, what happened in her past that drove her to this, and it was a real curiosity, and there was sort of a real truth to that interview style where, I think you played a little clip of Hillary Clinton, and this is not specific to Hillary Clinton, but he seems to avoid now with some of these A-listers, when I hear the show and an A-lister goes on, I tend to tune out. I still enjoy Howard more with the gang and their interaction. Though today he had David Spade on. I think David Spade is a Howard Stern guest. He's been there for a long time, and I'll almost always turn on David Spade because I find him to be interesting. But I just find that Howard now sort of avoids hot button issues. He actually came out and said with Hillary Clinton that he wasn't going to talk about the server. He wasn't going to talk about the emails. And I don't want to get caught in that political piece, so to speak. But when I think about his interview style, I love that he took an interview with Jenna Jameson very seriously, probably researched, had his people research it, and he put forth and entertained. It wasn't just about, shocking tits and ass, so to speak.
Yes, and you're right about that. Like the porn star interviews where he would just like have him go on the Sibian or whatever. that got boring after a while because we weren't, I mean, well,
I don't know about that, but
all right, I'm saying things that I really don't mean at this point.
I'm touching myself in my side pockets.
But you're right. And do you think maybe he almost like, and you're gonna laugh. You're probably gonna laugh at this, but almost like a doctor seeing one too many deaths or seeing one too many, amputations or something. Do you think he just got tired of seeing train wrecks in his studio? Do you think maybe that was part of it?
I think he's already referenced that. I mean, he's already talked about, he's into his 60s, and that's just not his focus of, porn stars. He's even talked about the Sibian. It only had so much of a shelf life.
Yeah. And like,
I guess I can appreciate that for sure.
Yeah. Like, and I am sympathetic. Like I said, it's our loss, but he's earned it. I can't,
So let me ask you this. Let me make my final point about Howard and Marcy Turk. And you've definitely talked about this with other entertainers as well, or musicians. When we listened, Howard felt like one of us. He was a guy that went to work 5 days a week. He had the annoying wife, but he preached, loyalty and going to work and hard work like a regular guy. And us regular guys, we would wait to go into the big fancy club by the velvet ropes, and we would never get in. And now the article says Howard bypasses all that while going in with George Clooney. Don't blame Marcy Turk, as this is what Howard Stern wanted all along. Wow. Final thoughts on this whole Marcy Turk, Howard evolution debate argument?
Well, I blame Marcy Turk for changing the show. Okay, that's the only thing you can't blame her for changing Howard himself. He wants what he wants, but for you can blame. I guess you could blame her for deciding who's going to be on and who's not. So there are people who we would love to hear who have been sort of, banned from the show for reasons that we're not aware of. So you could blame her for the changes to the show that we don't like. But as far as his work schedule and as far as his life outside the show, that's on him, 100%.
Do you think that this? Do you think that this new Howard has affected? I didn't even write this question down, but when it's all said and done, in terms of his legacy, I mean, if he ended, let's say, 2005, it would have just been this rip-roaring. I mean, it's just an amazing train wreck of a show, and now we've had almost we're approaching 15 plus years. Well, no, let me take that back. But has this new, gentler, less id Howard Stern affected his legacy?
No. We'll always have what we had. He'll always have what he's done. Like all you got to do is watch.
Do you read the websites? I mean, Reddit.
I don't.
Crush Howard.
I know. That's why I don't read them.
But yeah, I stopped listening to some of these anti-Stern.
We're not being that nice here either. But we're also making cases for things that have happened also.
When I get in my car to go to work and I put on Sirius radio, I always still put on Howard first.
Yeah, you said that.
I always put on Howard. Let me see what's on the Stern show.
Yeah, I don't. But that's all. But wait. There's a reason. No. There's a reason. Because I'm at work before he starts.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Okay. That's all right. Let me ask you a question. You get in your car after work. Do you go up to 100 to see what was going on with the show that day?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So when I got for example, today I got in and Spade was on, so I listened to that for my 8-minute commute back home.
All right, let's get to some serious stuff. In between Marcy Turk and Howard's metamorphosis.
Wait, I'm sorry. I have a question. I know I have a question. Because I don't know if you brought it up. What year did Marcy Turk come on board? I don't know. Do we have that?
I don't know officially. I want to say 2011, but I don't have that in front of me.
2011, around that time would make sense because that's when this stuff really started to change.
Yes.
So so continue. I'm sorry.
In between Howard's metamorphosis, his longtime newswoman Robin Quivers was battling cancer.
Mm-hmm.
April 2013, Robin missed a day as she admitted on the air the day earlier that she had a blockage preventing her from urinating. Her health situation quickly declined to the point that she had to have cancer surgery. We're going to credit RollingStone.com, the unbreakable Robin Quivers. May 2013, she had a 12-hour operation that had surgeons removing a grapefruit-sized tumor and surrounding cancerous tissue from her pelvis. No one took the news harder than Stern, who had threatened to quit his show if his broadcast partner of 32 years didn't make it, and so on and so forth. We knew that something was going on. This was a poorly covered-up secret. We knew that Robin, based on the sound, that she was broadcasting from home via an ISD line. She, I think, had only missed 1 or 2 days throughout her own struggle. On September 9, 2013, Robin Quivers finally admitted on the air, in studio, to her cancer battle. Most Stern fans knew that Robin was in dire straits medically and was broadcasting from an ISD line at home. She made it back triumphant as Howard proclaimed, "This woman loves chemo." It was kind of a touching moment on the Stern show. Thoughts on the very long but successful cancer battle for Howard's longtime partner and sidekick, Robin Quivers.
It was now, unlike you, I didn't know anything was going on until she came back. I had no idea.
You didn't know that she was broadcasting from an ISD line?
I knew that, but and I figured I really thought it was just this is what the show was. I didn't because I didn't listen enough to really think about that. So
were you not a fan? I mean, I'm not trying to be
I was turned off by the new directions that the show was taking, honestly. You know, it wasn't must-listen radio anymore.
Okay.
You know, right. So I guess that's why. And then when I didn't realize what had gone on until the day she returned, and Howard disclosed all of that, all of that stuff. And yes, it was touching. You love seeing and hearing these two, how much they really love each other. That's, because we go back with them. And, it's, look, a lot of people have criticisms about Robin, but she brings out the best in Howard, I have to say.
Do you think the show was hurt in the sense that she was not broadcasting from the studio? Because I know it did.
Sure.
When she came back, it felt like a little push, like the show got a little bit sharper, a little edgier.
Yeah, because the guest, even they were hardly talking to Robin, like because she wasn't there. Like she would chime in, but you could definitely tell when she's there and when she's not. It seemed like they were trying to cover it up. They were trying to make it seem as if she was there. And I feel like they should have referenced the fact that, she wasn't, because it did make a difference. So yes, when she came back, the show definitely kicked it into overdrive again, at least for a little while.
Yeah, they would reference it only if like a guest would say something. I remember a lot of guests would come in and they would say, like, they'd hear Robin and they go, "Robin, I don't see you," and then Howard would say, "Oh, she's broadcasting from home," but we never knew
why.
For what? I mean, they had referenced earlier medical problems, but you didn't read, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying I do a ton, but there was a lot of stuff online that Robin was really going through some dire straits medically, including
I had no idea.
The premise of cancer.
I had no idea. I have to admit, I had no clue. But that, Like I said, I was not an everyday listener at that point because the quality of the show was not what it used to be. I mean, how else can I say it? It's like I don't listen to Lucky Town because I don't really like it.
Oh gosh.
You all can't see it out there, but I love seeing the look on his face when I say something like that. He just looks at me with this disdain. Because
I always go, I'm about to start something, and you go, but wait, let me ask you a question. February 2015, Well Rock Industries announced a partnership with Stern to set up future direct-to-consumer digital media hub service with a potential mix of free and subscription-based programming. This initially was the impetus that leads to the Howard Video Clips piece on the Sirius XM app. As we stated on the last podcast, no more Howard TV, no more in-demand service. Now you can see very cleanly edited Stern Show clips, most of them focusing on his long-form interviews from the show. I do watch a little bit of it from time to time. The clips are relatively short and focus again on those long-form interviews and musical performances. They're now put on the Sirius XM app. Howard Stern video clips on the app. Gru, any thoughts?
Yes, I never watched them, and here's why. It's this for the same reason that I hardly ever watched, and we've talked about this, I hardly ever watched like the E! Show or any of that.
Well, hold on. Can I interrupt?
Yeah, go.
Because in my own notes I put, I love you didn't watch the E! Channel? I miss it so much.
We used to talk about how it took away from some of the mystique of the radio show.
I said that, really?
I maybe I said it, but I remember us talking about it. This is going back 20 years already. But the only times I would watch that kind of stuff was when something major happened. Like I remember watching like when Artie attacked his assistant, like those kind of things. Like
that was in demand.
Yeah. But and I would actively seek out those kinds of things, but I don't need to see Hillary Clinton talking to Howard. Hearing it is enough, So yeah, that's my opinion. I never really got into seeing the radio show on TV. What I did love, and I'm sure, I mean, we passed it kind of, but what I did love was that other E! Show, that Howard Stern interview show. But that's a whole different thing.
I think my biggest gripe with it is it's so cleanly edited, and it focuses on really the stuff that honestly I'm not too interested in. I mean, there are clips of the interplay with Howard and the gang, but it's just so cleanly edited. Some of the stuff I think they posted, some of the old guys are edited out of it. It just I wasn't huge into in demand. I didn't have it, but I had friends. I would go and hang, or maybe even you had it. But it's so cleanly edited.
I had everything.
I mean, the in demand. It was much more long form. You could see the drama playing out in the studio. Here, it's like a 3-minute clip of Paul McCartney, or a 4-minute clip of Jennifer Aniston in L.A. I don't know. I very occasionally I'll watch a clip, but
I'll watch a good musical performance.
Even they're just so sanitized. I don't know.
Yeah, but I'll tell. Actually, it's funny because I did see when I was watching.
What, the Mickey Thomas? I'll give you that one. That's the best one.
Well, wait a second. You joke about that, but that's one I would tune in for. Remember we used to talk about those B and C list guests who were interesting to us, like a Christopher Cross. I'd watch that.
But does he have? He doesn't have those guys on anymore.
No, but you mentioned it, so I'm saying that's what I would watch. But I remember I was watching. There was a clip of something. I don't know what it was, but I remember looking at the studio and remarking to myself, because I usually speak to myself. I said, Andrew, why is the studio so beautiful?
Yeah.
It used to be this dump of a radio station, and I love that. Like, it's gorgeous. It's nicer than my apartment.
On
As
the
it should be, I guess.
On the interview with Spade was referencing the couch, and Howard just said that they had it replaced. So
I think Dice, like when Dice Clay was on, I watched that. I watch my favorite people.
Yeah, well, but do you remember? You referenced one of my favorite interviews of all time, Christopher Cross.
Yes.
Do you remember? I don't know. What I always said was the most amazing, and it's Howard's. At that point, he took a guy who was washed up for years. I mean, even back then, Christopher Cross. But if you remember, he had talked about that he had a mentor in his life that was very important to him, and his name was Al Glasscock. And Howard,
I remember that.
Howard instantly seized on it, and then Jackie, and then it just wonderfully disintegrated into just a mess of an interview. But Howard got that little opener, and what? And
it just went right in there.
We were dying.
Well, do you think that it's Marcy Turk's hand that says this guest is not big enough?
Absolutely, because something had to go down. Because I didn't even put this in my notes, but clearly, insult comedians are no longer welcome on the show, and I just cannot believe. I mean, he had Lisa Lampanelli on a couple of years ago, and she even said, "I'm so surprised you guys asked me back on the show." I don't know. I never considered Gilbert Gottfried an insult comedian. I considered him just a great comedian, and he was such a great fit for the show. And it really bothers me. I mean, listen, I'll go ahead and live my life, but it just they were great, stern guests. They were our guys, and you and I, who were big fans of the studio interplay, these were a couple of the celebrities that we loved because of their honesty or their fit with the show, and a lot of them are, I guess, not welcome back or not asked back.
Maybe it's the Marcy Turk era is trying to avoid controversy.
Could be.
Because I know Gilbert's got no filter, but what are they afraid of? At this point in his career, what are they afraid of? They're on satellite radio. They could do and say what they want. Howard has always been able, at least since he's been sort of at the top, he's been able to get away with saying things like racial things like that nobody else would get away with. So what exactly is Marcy Turk afraid of?
So Artie had said, referenced in earlier interviews, that Howard was the one celebrity, the one that exactly what you said, that could pretty much do and say whatever he wanted and had the platform to do so. I think his wife, Marcy Turk, whatever it is, and I even referenced, which you disagreed with me on, it wasn't a Howard podcast, but we talked about Don Imus passing away, and my point was his obituary, the articles online were sort of not exactly, but a reference to maybe Howard, because Howard was Imus times 100, and a lot of that stuff was not very friendly towards Imus and his legacy. It was just focusing a lot on his last couple of years, the racial stuff, and my theory was Howard looks at something like that and says, I don't want my legacy to be strippers throwing baloney on chicks' asses. But we knew that there was a bigger comedic point to be made there, at least in my mind.
But maybe now that his daughters are grown women, maybe that's got something to do with it.
I'm not saying no. Yeah,
and because Imus, to his credit, he never let up. He was just as vile.
No, especially no. He ended up on like W.
No, but I'm forgetting about where
New York.
No, but forgetting about where he was, I'm talking about he still was a jerk. Like
I don't know. I didn't listen to Imus. I don't know.
Rest in peace. But he was still considered vile, and he embraced it. Maybe Howard, like you said, maybe Howard didn't want that to be him, and that's perfectly commendable.
That's what I said. But you said that you didn't feel that there was.
No, I agreed with you. I agreed that maybe you're right, that Howard didn't want that to be his legacy.
All right, for homework, I want you to pull when I asked you about Imus's death and Howard. Is that being a tentpole for Howard's legacy? And I said Howard looked at something like that, and I made some comment that Howard looks at something like that, or may look at something like that and go, "Wow, I don't want that to be," because everything has changed. I mean, media has changed. You just can't do and say. But
I'll check it out. I feel like I agreed with you. Well, I agree with you now. You convinced me.
December 15, 2015, Howard announced his new deal with Sirius XM to continue his radio show for an additional 5 years. The agreement also gives Sirius the rights to his radio and video archives for on-demand streaming application until 2027. Howard's coming up now on the end of the 5 years. I didn't even ask you about it, but let me ask you now. Do you see Howard re-signing in some form or fashion after his 5-year contract is up?
Good question, because I could see him re-signing in a very different capacity.
I thought you said for sure he was going to re-sign in some ways.
No, I think last week I said I didn't think he was going to re-sign with Sirius. I thought he'd go maybe the podcast route.
Okay.
But I'm thinking maybe he'll re-sign because they'll keep the channel, at least one of them, to play constant content. Maybe they'll play both of them. Maybe they'll have both of them, and maybe he'll do like an Oprah does, like one show a week. Which, at least if he does one show a week, we'll know. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean when I say that? Like, we'll know. Today's Howard Stern day on the air, on the radio. Instead of getting into the car, on Tuesday morning and being like, all right, Howard, it's like, like that.
Well,
at least we know.
Let me hear that again. That
like Ed Howard. So now we know that Monday is the Howard Stern show, just like Friday night is Real Time with Bill Maher, and Saturday Night Live. It's like once a week. I think in a way that would be better. That way you save it all for one show, and let the rest of the week be the gang doing their thing. Give Sal and Richard a show, stuff like that.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Maybe not. But I don't see him just chucking Sirius away completely. I think I said something different last week, but in thinking about it, I think he'll stay on in some capacity. I just don't. I think it'll be. You can't go from 3 to 2. You can go from 3 to 1. 3 to 2 is just like, I don't know. It's kind of thumbing your nose at everybody. But I think it'll be something like that.
I like your math. Is that Common Core?
I think Common Core. Yeah. No, you can't. That's what I mean. You can't he's just re-signed for another $500 million. Now it's going to be two days a week. It's like, what? It's just strange. It's like, just say, I don't want to do it I want to do it once a week. I'd be happier with once a week than. Would you be happier with once a week all in than 2 saturated shows a week? What do you think?
Well, all in's a matter of opinion and effort, but yes, I would take. Because my thing is, every time he re-signs, I say to myself, all right, well, I could work for another 4 years. I'll have the radio in my car. I'll be able to listen to him on the app, and it'll make my drive to work a little bit sweeter. So I guess myself personally, that's how I reference my life. I could work till at least till I'm 55, because Howard will have a presence on the radio. So
I think.
Yes, to make a long, boring answer short. Yeah, of course, I'd rather have for most things one show all in than 2 week.
Yeah, I'd rather have Monday Night Raw rather than Raw and SmackDown. But I'd also love to have access to on-demand access to the archives, which we don't really have, do we?
No, and I don't think you're going to get that because I think he's very protective, and as long as you have hot feuds with Stuttering John and Jackie, you're not going to not hear that on 101, but you're going to hear very specific and edited shows. He does play the old stuff from time to time, but I mean, if it'd be one thing if they had somewhat more friendly relations, but Stuttering John's just gone off the deep end, really rips Howard mercilessly. And so, okay, whatever. But anyway, even if he didn't, I just don't think you're going to get that. I mean, it would be great if you had just click and choose, but you'll get whatever's in there has been sort of pre-screened stuff.
Do you think that he thinks the quality of the show has waned over the years?
I think no, but I think you got to be fooling yourself, right? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's not.
We're transparent. We know we're not we know we're shells of what we used to be.
It's not the same. It's not the same show, and but what happens for me is that once in a while, I get that belly laugh in the car where I think I'm going to hit the divider in the highway, and I'm like, damn, I missed that from Howard. But that has to do with fandom, and when you're really, I mean, growing up, Howard, I mean, we probably, one of the first times we talked, after a while, we bonded over our mutual love of all things Stern Show. So, when you have a real intense love affair with something and it starts to wane, it hurts a little bit.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And but look, it's the way of things. And look, I'm still grateful for what we have, but that doesn't mean I don't look at what we don't have anymore with some regret.
Let's move on because we got some other stuff to still talk about in the world of Howard. April 2018, Howard Stern inducted Bon Jovi into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Howard famously tells Bob Dylan to fuck off during the speech.
Wait, who? I don't remember that.
Bob Dylan. Yeah, he told Bob Dylan, fuck you, Bob Dylan. Howard inducting Bon Jovi. Any thoughts about that? I mean, I could tell you what I remember about it.
It was cool. I mean, it wasn't. Yeah. It was nothing. It was nothing spectacular. No. He definitely.
I just remember that he bellyached so much about going to Cleveland. It's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, jeez. Yeah, I know, but and that was a sort of, for guys like us, that was kind of a shadow hovering over the thing because we're watching it live. At least I remember watching it live and knowing that he didn't really want to be there. But I don't remember the "fuck you, Bob Dylan" thing. Can you refresh my memory on that one? He just said "fuck you, Bob Dylan."
Yeah, I think he was referencing that Bon Jovi was not a critical darling, but they had a ton of hits, ton of rock classics, and Bob was sort of this ethereal cultural icon, but you couldn't understand a word he was saying, and
See, to me that's the old Howard right there. Maybe maybe the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is not the place to do it, but
I think when Bon Jovi was playing live, they panned to the audience to see Howard and Beth's dancing, and Howard's just standing up straight, looking so fucking miserable. I remember.
But see, that to me is funny, and I enjoy that because us in our insane meanness that we have, and we're nice guys, but we have we do have anger issues sometimes, and we kind of like to see Howard miserable. I know that's wrong of us, but that's where the best Howard Stern comedy comes from, no?
Well, we always we saw a little bit of ourselves in Howard.
Yeah.
March 2019, Stern announced his third book for Simon & Schuster entitled Howard Stern Comes Again. It was released May 14th, 2019. Continued the transformation of Howard Stern as he had 37 interviews in the book. The interviewees are a who's of show business, featuring musicians, comedians, and actors. Lady Gaga, Tracy Morgan, Gwyneth Paltrow, Jay-Z, Billy Joel, Amy Poehler. With a few exceptions, Gru, the interviews take place in the past 10 years. There are only 5 that predate Stern's move to satellite radio in 2006. So how are most of the hardcore Stern fans taking the book? Credit cheatsheet.com. The article, Why Howard Fans Are Trashing His New Book. It talks about when Howard Stern Private Parts hits bookstores in '93. It was an absolute sensation. First printing sold out in a few hours. It was the fastest selling book in the history of Simon & Schuster. Critics loved Howard in his new book, while legion of Howard's fans have taken it to trashing online. Since its publication, about half of the reviews on Amazon.com awarded it 1 star. Here is why: the book has rubbed the Stern faithful the wrong way. Stern fans have called it everything from awful, sad, terrible, and a ripoff. In the case of Howard Stern Comes Again, you'll find a stunning amount of negative feedback, and it's all coming from Howard fans themselves. Out of more than 1,400 reviews, 47% gave it the worst rating possible, 1 star. Another 7% gave it its next worst rating, 2 stars. Boring, total bummer, trash, terrible, time to retire, already one fan wrote, while another zinged. Boring is another understatement. Fans wondered why there's little new content and hate the evolved Howard. They don't want to see this guy who goes on The View and plays it nice, as Howard did in May of 2019. They'd like to see him insult many of the co-hosts. In short, many of Howard fans consider the former hero's new book a pure cash grab, and they consider his kinder, gentler persona the stuff that naps are made of. Gru, how did we get here? Absolutely stunning trashing of Howard's and his new book. I'd like to hear your thoughts, because I certainly got a lot of them. Howard Stern Comes Again. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's I can't say it's a bad book, but it's not what we as Howard Stern fans want from him. We don't need that. We don't need to see. He comments on interviews every day. What's new about it? There was very little new about it, and Private Parts and Miss America were 2 just rollicking, hilarious, just ridiculously funny books that we really enjoyed and really brought us into the mind of Howard Stern and into his life. And this was Hollywood Howard. This was about Howard and his Hollywood elite, and that's exactly what his fans don't want. So I don't think it was a badly written book. I just think it was, the concept itself was not what we wanted. And those are my thoughts. And I haven't, to be honest, I haven't even finished it.
I put it down after maybe the second or third time. I mean, to sit there and say it's not a poorly written book, it smelled to me of cash grab, and I felt kind of insulted when Howard talked about how he'd been working on it for 2 years. I went directly to the original content, hoping for something about Artie or something revelation. I got some fake, bullcrap cancer scare. The new content pieces are shockingly short, and to me, it's just a repackaging. It's like Greatest Hits Volume 3 or an extended cut of a movie. I just, insulting as a fan. And, if you listen to the show, there was all this initial publicity, and it died off quickly. It died off real quickly. Like, he didn't really want to.
He saw the writing on the wall.
Well, I mean, and I'd be curious, in Private Parts and in Miss America, he referenced sales, and it was an ongoing thing with the show. And to go back to Private Parts and Miss America, what's the saddest to me is he's publicly disavowed both books. Now, I was not a huge fan of Miss America, but I was absolutely a huge fan of Private Parts. I mean, I actually think that was sort of, I'm not going to say it's the wind and the wuthering, but it was a pretty revolutionary book. I mean, it was for the it was for the 90s kid. It's just the way it was presented, sort of id, sort of free verse, just off the top of it. The way it was written, I just was engrossed in every word. And it was disappointing to me that he disavowed it. He was on Conan's podcast, and even Conan O'Brien said, why would you those are great pieces of work. You're a different guy back then, and that's fine to say. And you know, if I'm Howard, it's disappointing because, hey, I've changed, but those pieces were back then. That was his truth, and they were just amazing books. At least Private Parts. I did like Miss America, but I really super loved Private Parts. Was just amazing, and it was sad to hear him disavow some of his earlier stuff.
Yeah, and it's like I'd be just as upset if like Eddie Murphy came out and said he doesn't like 48 Hours or Trading Places, things like that, because he's changed. You know, that doesn't make what you've done, just because you've changed, that doesn't make what you've done any less important. You know, Private Parts was our To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
I mean, it was our... it's still, both of them are still... I guess I'm a bigger fan of Miss America than you are, but yes, Private Parts was the ultimate was the perfect book for people like us, and you know, Comes Again was just
It's almost to me like you would almost in a way like a movie franchise. I mean, to me, the first one was just historic, revolutionary. The second one captured moments of that original sort of spark, and the third one was just I don't know. It was just, to me, was just a complete. I mean,
he's not a cash grab kind of guy, though. That's the thing. That's what doesn't make sense to me.
I don't know. To me, I don't see. I want to sit there and read, and you know, and maybe the stuff that I found interesting interview wise was the pre 2006 stuff. You know, he only had they said, like 10 or so interviews predating 2005 when he had a little bit more of an adventurous sort of style. You know, nothing from the Whack Pack. I mean, it was just, you know, do I really want, again, do I want to read Billy Joel? Do I want to read, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow?
Of course not. I wonder, did they ever say, or has he ever said where the concept for the book came from?
No, well, I think on the air he talked about sort of now how he's had this reputation of being the greatest interviewer, which I think is truly debatable.
Yeah,
in a good way. In a good way, I think Howard does do a great interview. And so he's had all this publicity, and I think it was sort of a way to reference and maybe document in time all these amazing interviews that he's had. You know,
so do it in a freaking magazine.
Yeah, or to me, you know. So what I was hoping for as a fan was maybe some really cool new content, and I got nothing. It was so effing disappointing. Agreed. I opened up the book, and I was like, I went right to the new content. Shh. Nothing cool. Shh.
Yeah.
And I put the book down. It's on a coffee table now.
Yeah, it's on my table and not going anywhere. I'm reading. I'm on to Mike Ruzioni's book about the '80 hockey team.
Okay, save that for the Mike Ruzioni podcast.
That's probably got more foul language than Howard Stern Comes Again.
All right, let's stay on point, brother.
It's late. It's late.
I know, but let's finish up, because what might be seen by many hardcore Stern fans, and again, as the proverbial nail in the coffin, was Howard Stern's 2019 interview with Hillary Clinton. Howard has never been shy about expressing his support for Hillary in the 2016 election. So much so that Howard definitely put his long-time friendship with the great Stern Show guest Donald Trump, who was opposing Hillary Clinton, on the back burner. We do know that Donald went on to defeat Hillary. It was said that if Hillary went on Howard Stern's show, that maybe, just maybe, he would have made her warmer and more inviting to his massive audience, that in turn may have helped Hillary potentially defeat Donald Trump. A pretty wild theory grew. Could Howard Stern have helped Hillary Clinton in 2016?
Probably, because I think you have a lot of Howard Stern fans in that Rust Belt area where you don't
But
think
Howard
so?
Stern big in the Rust Belt? Like what? Like what's the Rust Belt? I mean, give me a state.
Pennsylvania, Ohio, working class. He's a working class. His fans are working class. You don't think so?
Yeah, but I do think, and this is nothing to do with the Hillary interview. I think Howard has overplayed, as the years have progressed, the power that he has over his audience in terms of moving the dial with products or with politicians. Now, if you told me in 2004, maybe, not 2016 Howard, sanitized Howard.
Okay.
On Sirius. If 92, he opened up a Snapple. I fucking went to the store. I couldn't wait to try this iced tea. Klecko's restaurant in Rockville. We went. I don't believe. I don't believe he has that kind of clout. Could he have moved the dial? Maybe, but he's backed other politicians before. Unsuccessfully. I don't know if unsuccessfully is the right word, but I know he's backed others and they have not won. So
he won the election for George Pataki.
How many years ago was that, Crew?
That was 94, I think.
Okay, Thank you.
No, you're right. And yes, 2016 Howard, maybe it's just numbers because his audience is much smaller now because of Sirius. Like I say that the Rust Belt, the working class are the fans, but are the working class, the middle class in those states, are they subscribing to Sirius? Probably not. So, but I do think it could have made a difference. It could have.
Fair enough.
Maybe in a state like Florida, maybe because, he's got a lot of transplanted New Yorkers down here. So maybe that could have made a difference in a state like Florida. Look, to speculate is silly because there's really no way to tell, but it's certainly possible. If she can, but the thing is, I don't think she would have come off when she was running. I don't think she would have come off the same way as she came off in the 2016 interview. I mean the interview from a couple months ago. Two different Hillary Clintons. That's what I think.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, do you find those kind of interviews interesting?
No, I don't think I've even heard the complete Hillary interview.
I wrote in my notes that I could have broken down the entire interview, but who cares? The difference to me was how Howard has had politicians on his show before, but his interviews would touch upon important topics. But Howard would try to crowbar in funny points or questions on taboo subjects, or Howard would just overtly pine for influence in the politician's administration. To me, the Hillary Clinton, I think the big criticism of the interview was it was so overtly political, nothing of any kind of humor per se, and Howard avoided. To me, I'm not a fan of Hillary Clinton's, but had he asked her about some of the sensitive topics, emails and servers, and had she given a reasonable response or something like that, I might have maybe become more of a fan. But he avoided it, and then it kind of had the arrogance to talk about it after the interview that he was not going to touch upon this. So for me, I didn't listen to the Hillary interview. I had no interest. Ultimately, I'm not a huge fan of the long-form interviews. Any sort of final thoughts on the Hillary Clinton interview?
Just a non-factor. I mean, too late. A couple of years too late, and still not interesting. Because these are people who he would have made. Like when I hear Hillary Clinton talking, and I heard, and in our opening clip package, there's some Hillary Clinton stuff. I'm hearing in my mind that soundbite. Bap, 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 bap. Remember, remember, that's what I'm hearing when I hear that, and you would never hear that anymore. You know why? Because it is disrespectful, and he doesn't like to be disrespectful anymore. But that's what I'm hearing when I hear an interview like Hillary Clinton. These are people who he used to make fun of, like Jennifer Aniston and like Gwyneth Paltrow and all these things, all these people. Same realm. to me. And
So-
it's not appointment radio to me.
Is this when I say final blow? It's never really a final blow, but would something like this be the final stake in the coffin or final blow for hardcore Stern fans? I mean, are you and me gonna ever be the fervent Howard Stern fans that we used to be?
Probably not, but that doesn't mean that he can't come up with a grand slam every now and then, and you know, you never know what. That's the great thing about Howard is you never know what's going to happen. You know, he could get pissed about something on Sunday night and just come into the studio, rip roaring Howard, you know, over some shit. You know, who knows? He'll always be there, and no, we'll never be the hardcore fans that we were because our lives just don't. There's too much else out there. Yeah. Like there's you know, we had Howard and the WWF. You know, that was our life. You know, and little Billy Joel sprinkled in. But now it's like there's 800 million things going on, and you know, even Sirius XM has dozens of channels that I have on my presets that I listen to. So those days are over, and it's not it's not just Howard; it's everybody.
Yeah,
you know, the days of hardcore fandom are over because there's just too much, right?
Yeah. You know, I was going to say this at the beginning of the podcast, but I just feel it's just kind of sad. You know, when I listen to Howard now, it's grasping for straws. I'm hoping to hear something magical, but I do agree with you that I still put him on first. I just switch off a lot faster than I used to,
and it's still fun. And it's still fun, and he's still entertaining to listen to, but it's not groundbreaking. But that's because the ground was already broken. What ground is there to break? You know.
Well, Andrew, I think there's no more ground to be broken. That's
ooh, I set you up for that one.
Bow on Howard Stern, the Sirius Years, Part 2.
Is there a Part 3?
That would be. See, that's a good question. That's a good question. You know, I'll just say this, and then I'd like to wrap it up. We'll talk about some future shows. Your point about podcasting is an interesting one. I think he will resign in some form or fashion. I don't think he's ready to go off the air, and I think maybe his arrogance or maybe just his you know, celebrity. I still think there's an audience, maybe a smaller one, but a loyal. You know, I think that like most things, his hardcore fans have shrunk. Well, maybe some of his mainstream fans, you know, like my mom loves him a lot more, which is probably not a great sign. She's like, I watched Howard on CNN with Anderson Cooper, and I'm like spitting bile in my mouth. I'm like, oh, God.
You're like, all right, I'm switching to Chris Wallace.
Yeah. No, it's just, you know, I was like, I have no interest, Ma. You didn't see him on The View? And I'm like... You know,
that's really funny to me.
That's not my bag, baby. So Howard Stern Sirius part 2 is a wrap. You want to talk about next week's show?
Yes, I think next week we are talking about the one and only Goldberg.
Well, Gru, I'm going to tell you who's next. Bill Goldberg is next. Probably one of the most polarizing figures in the world of professional wrestling. Maybe the only breakout WCW World Championship Wrestling star. He beat Hulk Hogan at the Georgia Dome for the belt. Moved on to the WWE in 2003. Had an ill-fated move to the WWE, and now we're on probably his third run in the WWE. He'll be wrestling Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, at Super Showdown. Off the top of our heads, I just find him to be a fascinating one. We'll dig deep into all of Goldberg's highs and lows, but anything off the top of your head, what we might talk about with one Goldberg, fellow Jew.
Yes, there's plenty to talk about, and even though I have never been his biggest fan, for some silly reason, every time he shows up, it's still appointment television. So I got to give him credit. And I'm looking forward to finding out some things from you that maybe I don't know, because I remember him from the beginning. But I'm definitely looking forward to this one. I didn't know before we went on the air here. I didn't know that that's what we were going to do next. You sent me a message during the podcast here that that's what we were doing next, and I was really excited about it. So I'm really looking forward to talking about Goldberg.
And in 2 weeks, I know you'll be salivating at this one. Get a napkin.
Oh, wait, hang on.
It's the 25th anniversary. It's maybe one of, if not our favorite musicians of all time. It's the boss, Bruce Springsteen, solo. The 25th anniversary, Human Touch, Lucky Town.
Has it been 25 years already?
It has been 25 years. I was thinking about it.
Shit.
I said to myself, I'd love to touch upon Bruce, but I want to do something kind of unique. And I thought instantly about his 2 solo albums. So I just did a quick search on Google, and it was like ultimateclassicrock.com. And it worked out perfectly. So it's been 25 years. Was it a commercial success? Was it a critical success? It's the boss solo, Human Touch, Lucky Town. Grew off the top of your head. Your guy. What do you think?
I'm gonna save it. There's so much to talk about that I have to think about it. So all I'll say is that that was, and this might actually, you probably know this, but people who know me, other people who know me don't know. That's when I became a Bruce Springsteen fan.
Okay.
Oddly enough, but I'm excited for that one. What a great topic. I'm really looking forward to that one.
And all along, we're moving closer and closer to WrestleMania. So I'm sure as we get a little bit closer, we'll touch upon all things WWE and even have a WrestleMania preview show. All right.
Yeah. Now it's time for some ruthless aggression, otherwise known as Jefferson Airplane or Jefferson Starship. Sorry.
That is correct, Jefferson Starship.
But yeah, right. This was good. It's almost therapeutic to talk about these things that we're so passionate about. Like, I was having a tough day, and I feel better now. You know, it's like we got something off our chest. You know,
you'll sleep well tonight.
Yeah, and the next 2 weeks. I'm always excited about every topic. I'm like counting the minutes until we talk about Goldberg, and then even more for Human Touch and Lucky Town by Springsteen.
Yeah, we had a good run of shows, though. We had some good topics, and then Howard Part 1 and Part 2 sort of wrapped it up.
Yeah.
We did Billy 12 Guards, but this is good. Over 400 downloads. I'll be curious to see how this one places. Put it in as Howard Stern, The Serious Years Part 2.
Yeah.
And let's wrap it up.
All right, and we will see you next week when we're talking about Goldberg. Until then, a 1, a 2, a 3, rip 'em.
Whack, whack.